Music producer, writer, performer and all-round entertainer Barry Upton has been a good friend of mine for many years. His creativity and positivity have led him to great success with many hit records internationally. He was a frontline member of chart-topping group Brotherhood of Man and went on to create Steps, one of the most successful pop acts to emerge in recent years. Plus, he had a song featured in an Oscar-winning film. As you might expect, his life has been full of amazing experiences with many wonderful stories to tell. Let's hear how a young Beatles fan from the 60s, with dreams of becoming a Beatle himself, became such a respected songwriter and musical producer, whilst at the same time leading a happy and fulfilling life in the world of entertainment. Born in Hastings by the Sea, a south coastal fishing town in Sussex, UK, on the 25th of February 1954, makes Barry a Piscean, of whom they say a talented, a dreamer, honest and warm-hearted. He has always been proud to share that birth date with Beatle George Harrison. Feeling as though he's pretty much had a charmed life with only a few near misses, he managed to more than fulfill his dreams. However, nothing was ever given to him, and he made it all happen from nothing. The harder he worked, the luckier he got, and apart from a few hiccups here and there, managed to go through life doing all the things he loves, ending up in his very own paradise. As a small boy watching Top of the Pops on his humble black and white TV, drumming along with pencils as drumsticks and chair cushions as drums, it was inconceivable for him to imagine he would someday appear on that very TV programme, and that his life and work would cross paths with so many icons of the music and entertainment world. He went on to write and produce songs that would become international hits, invent a famous, successful pop act that somehow influenced culture in Japan and Australia, commentated for Sky Football and the BBC at Wimbledon's tennis championships, plus was knighted Sir Barry Upton. Yes, Sir Barry Upton in Thailand. It was a showbiz friend of his, Shane Ritchie, who labelled him a kind of musical prostitute or pop tart. Hence, here we have The Confessions of a Pop Tart. Barry, tell me about your childhood and how you first became interested in music.
I was born in Hastings and my parents were Joan and Peter. He used to have a shoe repair business in Bexhill and used to ride his bicycle to his business every day. We didn't have any cars or anything like that in those days. We had a pram and my mum used to push me in a pram along the seafront, so I guess that's how I got the love of sea air. Then when I was about 18 months we moved to Luton because my father needed a job that was going to pay him a regular wage and it would have a pension at the end of it, that kind of thing. So Luton was a bit of an industrial town. So we moved up there, and then soon after my grandparents and some relatives, they also followed. My earliest recollection is my sister being born and an engineer coming to install our first black and white television. That was an amazing moment. I thought, this guy's a magician, look at that. Then we used to go back down to the south coast to Brighton for our holidays. Still had some relatives down there, still do to this day. And when I used to go for walks by the sea with my father, it was always amazing. I always felt so good to be alive. It's just something about the sea air. I remember another very special moment when my father went off to the 1959 FA Cup final as a Luton Town supporter, and he wore his straw boater. They were called the Hatters, and I still got that hat today. It's probably the oldest thing that I own here. And then we had a Danzig record player, one of those ones where the records would fall down, you'd stack them up and they'd fall down. But when we played LPs, I remember we had a Perry Como album, which my mother loved, and I always remember those dulcet tones coming out. So that was probably the first music that I really appreciated. And then we had some 78s of the Everly Brothers and Cliff Richard. I've still got those here, and I always loved the smell of vinyl. We used to have records by Sandy Shaw, Johnny Kidd and the Pirates, Frankie Vaughan, who I ended up working with later in life. So that was quite amazing. In 1963, I remember very vividly playing in our front garden, and one of the neighbours across the road in the upstairs bedroom were playing a record on repeat, and that was She Loves You by the Beatles. And I've never heard anything like that. That was just amazing. And that was my first big love of the Beatles, I suppose. And just after that, I used to put cushions on armchairs when there was Ready Steady Go came on the television. TV programs like Top of the Pops were starting about that time. And so I found that if I arranged these cushions on my sister's small armchair, and I sat on my small armchair, and I had two big pencils as drumsticks, I could pretend to be a drummer. And whenever those programs came on, my parents were in hysterics watching me drum along to the various songs. Then I think the first record I ever remember wanting to own, and I asked my parents to buy for me, was Telstar by not Joe Meek, by the Tornadoes. The producer was Joe Meek, who I found out about later in life. And there was another album as well that I asked them to get, which was Ready Steady Go, a compilation of some of the acts that used to be on Ready Steady Go, like Hines, the Rolling Stones, Brian Poole and the Tremolos. Brian Poole, who again I came to work with later in my life. The first guitar I ever owned was not really a proper guitar, it was just a toy guitar, but I had so much fun with it, pretending that I was one of those Beatles or I was a pop star. And my uncle Ray, he built a guitar which you could play, but I didn't know how to play, but nevertheless it always felt good to hold it. And then one day a very pivotal moment happened when my mother brought down from the loft an accordion, and I didn't know, but she used to play in a band and play the accordion in a band during the war. And it was just amazing to hear somebody play live music right in front of my eyes. So I thought, I want to do that, but I realised that the accordion it was too big for me to start off with. So I asked for piano lessons, and I did. I had those piano lessons, mostly classical music. It was the local church organist who used to give the piano lessons, so it's very straight and very upright, but it gave me a good grounding in music. And if we would go on holiday somewhere where there was a talent show, I would always go in for the talent show and play a piece, and I was very good at memorizing music. And so I'd go up and just bang a song like the Blue Danube out and win the talent show. Then the first proper show I ever did in front of an audience was at the Boys Brigade display, and a friend of mine, we got together and we loved the Baronites records. I used to buy the Baronites records, and again I ended up working with them later in life. So we mimed to one of their records. It was like a comedy thing, and Went Down the Storm. That was my first initiation into performing live entertainment.
So how did you enjoy your school teen years?
School wasn't for me. I was a bit shy. I used to get a lot of nosebleeds from hay fever from if the grass was being cut outside, and I could smell that. Straight away my nose would start streaming up. I ended up spending most of the time in the medical room. I was always told I would grow out of it, which I did, but then got full-blown hay fever later in life. So I wasn't so academic, but I did enjoy music lessons. I really enjoyed that, and I loved learning music theory. And also Luton Town FC was a bit of a side issue. My father used to take me to Luton Town games, and I ended up getting involved with the club as a program seller, and I became the chief program seller. which meant that I had a special responsibility, and that was to phone up at half time, because there's no internet, nobody had smartphones in those days. The only way that the crowd could find out what the halftime scores were was by me phoning up a central number, running around and unlocking a ladder and climbing up to the halftime scoreboard and putting the halftime scores in. And the reaction from 30,000 people to you just putting a slate with 3 or 1 or something like that in was just amazing. It was a great feeling, and I think that's something that stayed with me. It's entertainment after all. And then my mother used to allow me to go down to our local cafe by myself. She gave me enough money so that I could get a cup of tea, some beans on toast. The place was called the Pop Inn, and it had a jukebox, and I always had a little bit left over so I could put 2 selections into the jukebox, and they were always All You Need Is Love and Baby You're a Rich Man. And All You Need Is Love, I just love that song. There was a program called Our World, which was when they launched the satellite into space, which could beam pictures for the first time from country to country. And the UK's kind of contribution to that program was the Beatles in Abbey Road studio recording All You Need Is Love, and I was just transfixed. That's the first time I'd ever seen inside a proper recording studio, and little did I know I'd spend the rest of my life in recording studios, or pretty much of it. Then we bought my family bought a Grundig TK18 tape recorder, reel-to-reel tape recorder. So I used to spend Sundays, I think it was, when they did the chart rundown. This is mid 60s now. I would put a microphone linked into the tape recorder in front of the radiogram and try and record all the songs, cutting out the DJ. So it's like early downloading, really.
What were the first live bands you saw?
Oh, I didn't get a chance to see the Beatles, which I would have loved to have done. I remember when they came and did a show in Luton. It was in the newspapers, but I didn't get a chance to go and see them, unfortunately. Now, the first live show that my parents took me to was at the Odeon Cinema, and it was the Hollies. They were the top of the bill. There was Freddie and the Dreamers, there was Marianne Faithfull, and I remember the Four Pennies. There might have been a couple of others on the bill, I can't remember them now. But I do remember a lot of screaming, and it was just an amazing thing to see these pop stars live.
Any teen romances around that time?
Not really. I was a bit skinny, I was a bit gawky. I didn't have a proper girlfriend, although I did have an experience when we went on a school trip to France. I think it was 1969, and we were placed with families for a weekend, and a friend of the family was a beautiful young French lady called Adrienne, and we spent some time together, and I do believe my cherry was picked. Then I learned to play guitar, and that was a game changer. There was a guy called Glenn at school who already played guitar, and he was actually playing with a local show band, and he showed me how to play a couple of chords in a music lesson one day, and I thought, now I understand where you put your fingers, and I understood why, because I understood music theory and I understood the piano. So I managed to save up my pocket money and buy a guitar, and I just learned. My fingers were really hurting because it wasn't a good guitar. It wasn't an expensive guitar where you had to really push the strings down to make them work. So my fingers were red raw. But I learned to play from a Donovan songbook, a Bob Dylan songbook, and at that time, Creedence Clearwater Revival were on the radio all the time, and I just loved their records, and so I learned to play some of their songs. And pretty soon, I was able to join a show band, and it was Glenn's show band, but they needed a drummer, so I quickly learned to. They lent me the drums. I could play a little bit of drums because I played in the Voice Brigade, and they played a lot of Irish music, so I knew how to play those kind of rhythms. Anyway, they lent me the drums, and I learned to play a few rock and pop rhythms, and went out and started playing with that band. But I always wanted to be at the front. I always wanted to be one of those guitar players at the front. And sure enough, there became a vacancy in the front line for the guitarist. So they put me up front and got a new drummer in, and that changed everything. I was just loving being an entertainer, frontline entertainer, and I learned to play the guitar pretty quickly, and we were playing all the latest pop songs of the day, plus a few Irish show tunes, and a little postscript. Myself and Glenn asked if we could play on the last day of school, which was 1970. I would have been 16, and we did. We went and sound checked first, but we thought, let's plug our guitars into the main sound system. But somehow or other, we managed to blow the whole system. So the very last day of assembly of the school, the headmaster, he had to shout. The sound system didn't work. Oh dear.
So school was over and done. So what happened next?
Well, I remember our summer holiday that year was in Hayling Island holiday camp, and there was a guy called Kevin. He was the DJ there. For me, he was in showbiz, so I kind of hung around him, and I took my guitar. I had a new electric guitar by then, so I wanted to stand outside our chalet and look cool with my guitar. And then Luton, in those days, if you was at school and you were looking for a job, the main place to go was Vauxhall Motors, so I became a Vauxhall Motors apprentice. And also Paul Young, he was there at the same time as me. I think he was a year younger than me, and so as I was leaving, he was just arriving at basic training. And I always remember talking to him about the fact that I was playing in a band, and he said, "Oh yeah, well, I'm saving up to buy a guitar as well." Who knew what was going to happen in the future to him? Now, at Christmas that year, I was then promoted to frontman because Glenn left, so I became the lead singer and lead guitar. I was already playing some lead guitar anyway, but I was the whole band was then updated to suit me. And the manager of the band, who was an Irish guy, he had a daughter called Terry, and she used to play the organ. She played accordion as well, but she played the organ, and she then became my girlfriend. And we were together for about 2 years, and we were doing regular gigs together. Part of the time at Vauxhall Motors, they'd send you to college, so I used to love college. You'd maybe go for 3 or 4 months at a time, and life at college was good. I enjoyed it. The music was fantastic about that time. I remember in the summertime I used to play that. Mungo Jerry, Ray Dorset became a friend later in life, and Get It On, T-Rex, used to play that one. I used to love playing these songs, still do. And then I remember buying my first car, which wasn't a car, it was a van, for obvious reasons, because I could carry my equipment around in it. And I went to Ireland with Terry, and we went to concerts. We went to see Creedence Clearwater Revival, The Who, T-Rex of course, and that was our life at that time. It was fantastic. Life was wonderful.
Now you're gigging regularly and growing in confidence with your stage presentation. What about recording?
Yeah, well, the show band now was well oiled, and there was a guy that I was working with at Vauxhall Motors, because you got placed with different departments so that you could learn what the departments did. It was at the design section of Vauxhall Motors, and I was training to be a design draftsman. But there was a guy in the electrical section called John, and he had fuzzy hair, big long hair, loved Jimi Hendrix, but he had a recording set up at home, so he invited me to go and have a look, and then we tried out, and I tried recording a couple of songs, and also I actually wrote a couple of songs just to try and do something original. So I always had that spark to do something original, and they didn't come out too bad. But then after that, after a couple of years, Terry had left me and the show band had finished. But I'd got the confidence now to go out and do a band gig by myself. Actually, I formed a 3-piece, and we called it Silver Wine. And also, I was a lot more confident with girls by then, and that was the start of me being a pop-tart, really. So I used to mix with a lot of the college girls, and I remember one, she was a part-time topless go-go dancer. Yeah, even in those days. So my band, yeah, we were going out and we were doing lots of gigs, and we, at that time, it was the time of Sweet and T-Rex and wearing glitter on your face and makeup, Wizard, Roy Wood and Wizard. So we used to do that. We used to make our faces up, and I remember driving home from a gig one day, and I got stopped by the police. I wound the window down, and he, what's that? And I explained to him. I said, oh well, you know, I'm a pop guy, and he laughed and let me off. So I did a bit more recording at John's, and took the tape, the reel-to-reel tape, to Rocket Records. I don't know why I took it to Rocket Records then, but anyway, they listened to it and they gave me some encouraging words. I remember that. So that was really the start of me trying to be a songwriter, trying to be a recording artist, and I really, really wanted to be a professional musician.
So how did you go about achieving that?
Well, one day I was working with a guy in the department of Vauxhall Motors who was just so miserable, and he said to me, the longer you stay at Vauxhall, the harder it is to leave, and that kind of set the seeds for me to really push hard to leave and actually turn professional as a musician. My father, however, we used to have a lot of arguments about this, and you know, I understand now. All he understood was a steady job and a pension at the end of it, and so he used to sort of preach that I should stay there and I'm going to get myself a great pension when I'm older. But then one day I found a statistic. I found out about a statistic at Vauxhall that only half the people who paid into the pension scheme actually lived to get it. So armed with this, I went back home and another argument with my father about pensions and stuff. And anyway, we came to a compromise, and that compromise was that I would finish my 5-year apprenticeship, and at the end of it, yes, I could turn professional because I had something to fall back on. One of the perks of working at Vauxhall was you could buy new vehicles at quite a heavy discount, so and on finance. So I was able to do that, and I started having trips to Scotland, and I had friends in Dorset. I used to go down there at weekends, and I had a lot more freedom. And it was a nice. The early 70s was a great time to be alive.
I imagine your college antics were far more fun than school.
Yeah, well, when I was at college, I was being paid by Vauxhall Motors, so I had a wage, and I managed to get myself on the college social committee, and I remember booking bands like 10cc. I've still got the contract somewhere, and Brinsley Swartz and Procol Harum, Mungo Jerry, the Kinks. A lot of great bands I used to book into Luton College, and I met this girl called Carol while I was at college, and I remember going on a trip to Mount Snowdon, which was freezing cold, but we were cuddled up in the back of my van, so that van served a great purpose. And then I used to organise trips to Bedford Teacher Training College, because at Luton Secondary Technical College it was predominantly male, but at Bedford Teacher Training College it was 95% female. So we'd go up there and to their events, and usually didn't come home. And then we used to go to concerts, big concerts at Nebworth, which wasn't too far away from Luton. I remember them vividly.
Now, tell me about your interaction with John Peel.
Now John Peel. I booked him a few times at Luton College, and we became quite good friends. And he's just an amazing character. I remember him. He was sorting his records out in the back of his car in the car park, and I went out and invited him into the Students' Union bar, and a girl came over and asked for his autograph, and he wrote down on it, "To Margaret, thanks for the hour in the back of the van, John Peel." A real character. Anyway, one of the discos that he did for us, there were a couple of nubile looking girls dancing around in front of his disco decks, and in those days there wasn't all the political correctness that there is now, and he used to write a column. I think it was New Musical Express or Melody Maker, and he would talk about schoolgirls. And so he was doing the Reading Festival, and he suddenly phoned me up. I was in the drawing office, and suddenly shouted, "Barry Upton," and picked up the phone. "It's John Peel." "Oh yeah." He says, "Yeah, those two girls that were dancing in front of the decks. It'd be really funny if they were dancing in front of my decks at the Reading Festival." So I organised that for him, and it seems I didn't actually go to the festival, but it seems it was a total success.
The Barron Nights pop up into your life a few times.
Yes, the Barron Nights had offices in Leighton Buzzard, which wasn't very far from Luton, and by now I'd changed my band to a 4-piece, and we called it Silver City. This was 1974. Tony Avern, who was their manager, he suddenly became our agent, and we had so many gigs, and they were at a higher level than the social clubs and working men's clubs that we've been playing before. Then I found out, just as I was approaching the end of my apprenticeship in 1975, that Vauxhall had a redundancy scheme, and somebody said, "You know what, apprentices can get that redundancy package as well." So I inquired, and sure enough, I got it, which was just amazing. So I was preparing for turning pro at that time, and I managed to spend some of that money on a brand new 335, a cherry red 335. It was just brilliant, and I also started answering adverts for pro bands, or looking for people who were looking for pro bands. And one such agency, Mecca International Agency, we auditioned for them, and they said, "Well, we have an opening for you in Denmark." So what could be better? I'm finishing my apprenticeship, and then we're going to go straight to Denmark. And just before that, I went on a holiday trip down to France. I travelled all the way through France in my van. I slept in the back of the van, and a little camping burner, and ended up in Saint-Tropez on a nudist beach down there. I know. And had some great times with some girls I met on the way. And I always remember thinking, "Oh, I've only got 3 weeks to go, and I'm going to be free of Vauxhall. I've got a brand new 335. What could be better?" And then the very last day, they bang you out of the drawing office when it's your time to leave. And I still remember that vividly to this day. That feeling of elation, just leaving Vauxhall Motors and knowing that my professional life as a musician had just begun.
Confessions of a